Caught my ex-wife cheating and she gaslit me. Hey, true story. My name's Dan. It's wild how similar the patterns are. Different faces, different names, but the same kind of betrayal, the same gaslighting, the same pain. I guess that's what made me finally sit down and write my own story. Not for pity, but because I think it might help another man see what's coming before it's too late. This is the story of how I caught my ex-wife cheating and how she tried to gaslight me into thinking I imagined it. I met my ex-wife at a department store in Boise. I still remember the day like it happened yesterday. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I had gone in just to grab a few shirts before a business trip. I was walking past the women's section when I saw her. She was standing near a display of perfumes, laughing with one of the sales associates. I swear to you, in that moment, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She had this natural glow about her. No heavy makeup, just a simple sundress, sandals, and that effortless smile that made you stop mid-step. I must have walked past her aisle 3 times before I got the nerve to say something. I cracked some corny joke about how I didn't belong in the perfume section, and she laughed. That laugh hooked me instantly. We started talking, and somehow it just flowed. She wasn't standoffish or fake. She seemed down to earth, curious about me, even a little shy at first. By the time we said goodbye, I had her number. I remember walking out of that store grinning like an idiot thinking, man, I just met my future wife. We started dating shortly after. I'd pick her up from work and we'd go out to dinner or just drive around town. Those first few months were some of the happiest of my life. She had this energy that pulled me in, confident but gentle, funny but serious when she needed to be. I thought I had struck gold. 3 years later, we got married. It wasn't some big dramatic wedding. We went downtown Boise, signed the papers, and got our marriage certificate. I remember people asking why we didn't want a big ceremony, and honestly, we just wanted to save our money for traveling. That was our thing, taking off for a few days whenever we could. We went to Seattle, San Francisco, Vegas, even took a trip to Maui once. I felt like I was living my dream, the kind of marriage built on friendship and adventure. For the first few years, it really was that good. We both agreed early on that we didn't want kids. She said she wanted to focus on her career and her freedom, and I respected that. I didn't push her. I figured as long as we were happy, that's what mattered. But life has its own plans, and about 6 years into the marriage, she got pregnant. I remember her sitting on the edge of the bathtub with that test in her hand, just staring at it. She looked terrified. Her first reaction wasn't joy, it was panic. She told me straight up that she didn't want to go through with it, that it would ruin our lifestyle and everything we'd built. I was stunned. I won't lie, I wasn't sure what to think either, but something in me told me to fight for those kids. I told her we could do it, that we'd figure it out together. I begged her not to terminate the pregnancy. Eventually, she agreed to keep them. A few months later, we found out it was twins, 2 little girls. When they were born, everything changed. For me, it was for the better. I fell in love with being a dad. Holding those babies for the first time made me realize what real purpose feels like. But for her, it was like something died. She grew distant. She complained constantly about being tired, about how the girls took up too much time. I'd come home from work, help with diapers, bottles, everything, but she still acted like motherhood was a prison sentence. I tried to stay patient. I thought maybe postpartum depression was playing a role, or maybe she just needed more time to adjust. But deep down, I started noticing little cracks in the foundation. She was on her phone constantly. She'd take it into the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and if I so much as asked who she was texting, she'd blow up on me. "You're being controlling," she'd say. "You don't trust me anymore?" At that time, I was doing a lot of traveling for work, about 1 or 2 weeks out of every month. I manage logistics for a construction supply company, so trips are part of the job. I always made sure she and the girls were taken care of before I left. I'd FaceTime them every night, and she always acted normal, smiling, asking about my day, saying everything was fine at home. Then came the day that changed everything. I had been out of town for a 4-day work trip, and my schedule changed at the last minute. The project wrapped early, so I decided to surprise her and the girls by coming home a night early. I didn't text or call. I wanted it to be a nice little surprise. Maybe take her out for dinner, catch up, that kind of thing. When I pulled up to the house, everything looked normal from the outside. Lights were on, the car was in the driveway, but as soon as I walked through that front door, my heart dropped. The first thing I saw was clothes on the floor, a man's shirt, her blouse, her jeans, everything. And then as I turned the corner into the living room, I saw them. My wife and some guy, both completely naked, tangled up on the couch. For a few seconds, I froze. My brain just stopped working. It was like I walked into some alternate reality. Then something in me snapped. I rushed at him, and before I could even think, my fists were flying. I'm not proud of how bad I beat him, but in that moment, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like survival, like I had to defend what was mine. The guy scrambled, grabbed his keys, and ran out the door half naked. I can still see him sprinting down the street like some sick joke out of a movie. My wife was screaming the whole time, crying, saying, "Stop, you're overreacting. It's not what it looks like." Not what it looks like? Really? I stood there shaking, staring at her, trying to process how the woman I had given everything to could look me dead in the eye and lie like that. She tried to say they were just watching TV and that I misunderstood. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'll admit, I did the unthinkable. I lunged at her, not to hurt her, but I was furious. The betrayal, the lies, the gaslighting, it broke something in me. I stopped myself before I touched her, took a step back, and realized I needed to get out before things got even worse. I walked out of that house, got in my truck, and drove for hours without saying a word. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I told him everything, every detail. He told me to stay calm, document everything, and not contact her directly. Over the next few days, I moved out temporarily and started the divorce process. That's when the real madness started. She tried to flip the narrative completely. She told family and friends that I was abusive and unstable. She claimed I attacked her for no reason, leaving out the part where she was sleeping with another man in my house. But the worst came when she started threatening me through text messages, saying if I went through with the divorce, she'd make me regret it. I started recording our conversations just to protect myself, and I'm glad I did, because one of those recordings ended up saving me later. In one of them, she flat out said she'd hurt our daughters if I took her to court. She said she never wanted them anyway, and that I ruined her life by talking her out of that abortion years ago. Hearing that broke me all over again. That was the moment I knew she was gone. Whatever good part of her existed had been replaced by something dark. When I handed those recordings to my lawyer, his jaw dropped. We went straight to the judge, and from that point forward, I focused on one thing: protecting my girls. The divorce was brutal. She fought tooth and nail for money, tried to claim alimony, and even attempted to paint me as violent. But the evidence spoke for itself. The recordings, the texts, the witness statements from neighbors who heard our arguments. It all came out in court. Her lies fell apart fast. When it was over, I got full custody of my daughters. The court denied her alimony completely. She lost everything she tried to weaponize against me. Even after all that, I still have moments where I look back and wonder how it all went so wrong. I think about that day in the department store, how innocent it seemed, how perfect it all looked in the beginning. It's crazy how you can think you know someone inside and out, and then one day you realize you never really did. I'll be honest, it took me a long time to heal. There were nights I'd sit awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out if I missed the warning signs. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I traveled too much. Maybe I didn't make her feel appreciated enough. But the truth is, no amount of love, effort, or sacrifice can keep someone faithful if they've already decided to betray you. Now, years later, my life looks completely different. My daughters are doing great, smart, strong, and full of life. They're my world. Watching them grow has given me more purpose than I ever thought possible. I'm writing this not because I want sympathy, but because I want other men to know that when you see the signs, the secrecy, the manipulation, the gaslighting, don't ignore them. Don't make excuses. I did that for too long, and it cost me my peace. The real test came afterward, in courtrooms, lawyer offices, and in my own head, trying to keep it together for my daughters. I've had time to process everything now. Years have gone by. I'm in a better place, but it's taken work. A lot of it. I wanted to write this out because the part after the breakup doesn't get talked about enough. Everyone focuses on the discovery, the moment you find out, but not the long road that follows. That's where men really need to hear the truth. The morning after I caught my ex cheating, I left the house. I didn't even take much with me. A duffel bag, some clothes, and my work laptop. My hands were still trembling from the night before. I hadn't slept. My mind was racing with questions that didn't have answers. Why? Since when? Was I not enough? I spent the night at a buddy's place. He could tell I was on edge. I didn't go into details right away, but he knew something serious had gone down. The next day, I started calling lawyers. I didn't want to act out of anger, but I also knew I couldn't let her spin this in her favor. She was already good at lying and manipulating emotions. I'd lived through it. I figured it was only a matter of time before she'd try to turn the tables on me. By the afternoon, I found a family lawyer in Boise named Eric. Older guy, sharp, calm, and straight to the point. I sat in his office for nearly 3 hours telling him everything. I didn't hold back. The cheating, the phone secrecy, the threats about the girls, everything. He just sat there listening, taking notes. When I told him about the recordings I had, he leaned forward and said, "Dan, this changes everything. You did the right thing documenting that." He explained how those recordings could protect me in court. He said it was clear that she wasn't mentally or emotionally stable, and that with her threatening the children, I needed to file for emergency temporary custody right away. That night, I called her. Against my better judgment, I wanted to give her one last chance to come clean, to apologize, maybe even just to take responsibility. She didn't. She doubled down. She told me I was crazy, that I imagined everything, and that the guy I caught her with was just a friend who stopped by. I asked her if she seriously expected me to believe that after what I saw. She said, "You came home early without telling me. You scared me. You made me feel unsafe." That line still echoes in my head. She made me feel unsafe. She was already rewriting history, turning herself into the victim. I hung up and blocked her. That was it. From that moment, everything went through lawyers. The legal process was slow at first. My lawyer filed the paperwork, but she refused to leave the house. I was paying the mortgage, so technically I had the right to stay. But Eric advised me to let her have it temporarily. He said the court would see it as a sign of good faith, that I wasn't trying to escalate things. So I got an apartment nearby. It wasn't much, small, plain, but quiet. I needed that quiet. Within a week, I got my first taste of how far she'd go to play dirty. She filed for a protective order, claiming I was verbally abusive and unpredictable. She even told the judge I had a violent temper and scared the children. That was a punch to the gut. I hadn't laid a finger on her or my girls. The only time I ever raised my voice was after finding her naked on that couch. My lawyer told me not to panic. He said false allegations were common in divorces, especially when custody was at stake. He gathered all the texts, recordings, and witnesses, including a neighbor who heard her yelling at me that night, and we filed a counter motion. That's when the recordings came into play. One of them was from a few nights after the cheating incident. She didn't know I was recording. We were arguing about the divorce, and she said, "If you go through with this, I swear I'll make your life hell. I'll make sure those kids hate you. You ruined everything when you made me keep them." Another recording was worse. She was crying, saying, "I should have never had them. I never wanted to be a mother." When my lawyer played that one in court, the judge's face turned stone cold. You could feel the tension in the room. The opposing attorney tried to argue it was taken out of context, but there's no context that makes that sound okay. The judge didn't issue the protective order she wanted. Instead, he ordered a temporary custody evaluation. That was the first big win. The custody evaluation was grueling. Social workers came to my apartment, inspected everything, checked for safety, asked about routines, looked through the fridge, even noted where the girls would sleep. They visited her house too. I didn't find out until later that they noted emotional instability in her report. Apparently, she broke down crying during her interview and admitted to feeling resentful toward the children. When that report came in, my lawyer called me and said, "Dan, we're in a strong position." But she didn't go down quietly. She started calling me nonstop from blocked numbers. I ignored them. Then she started emailing me. Long, rambling messages alternating between begging me to take her back and threatening to destroy me. One email said, "You can't raise two girls on your own. You'll fail. They'll grow up hating you." Another said, "I'll tell the court you hit me. Nobody will believe you over a mother." I forwarded every single one of those emails to my lawyer. He said, "Just keep collecting. Every threat is another nail in her coffin." The actual divorce hearings took over a year. That's something most people don't understand. It's not quick, it's not clean, and it's never easy. You think catching your spouse cheating will make the outcome obvious, but the system doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about what you can prove. She tried everything. She claimed she was financially dependent on me, demanded spousal support, and said she couldn't maintain the same quality of life without me. My lawyer reminded the court that she was working part-time by choice and that she had access to full-time opportunities but refused to take them. He also brought up how she repeatedly said she never wanted kids, which didn't exactly paint her as a nurturing parent. When it came time for me to testify, I was nervous, but once I started talking, the truth came out naturally. I told the court about the night I came home early, about what I saw, about the threats, the recordings, and how I'd done everything I could to protect my daughters. When she took the stand, she tried to play the victim again. She cried, talked about how lonely she was when I traveled for work, and said she made a mistake. But then she went too far. She started denying things that were clearly on record, denying her own words from the recordings. That's when her credibility fell apart. By the time the final ruling came down, even her own lawyer looked drained. The judge granted me full custody. She got supervised visitation only, with the condition that she attend therapy and parenting classes. The court also denied her alimony entirely. The judge said, "Given her conduct and the evidence presented, spousal support is not warranted." When those words hit the air, it felt like someone had lifted a 2-ton weight off my chest. The months after the divorce were strange. I had won, legally, morally, logically, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a long, quiet exhaustion. There were nights I'd sit alone in the living room of my apartment after putting the girls to bed and just stare at the wall, trying to process how the woman I once loved had turned into someone so cruel. I didn't date for a long time. I didn't even think about it. My entire focus was on being a father. My girls needed stability. They needed someone who showed up every single day. At first, they had questions. Kids always do. They asked why mommy didn't live with us anymore. I didn't badmouth her. I just told them that sometimes adults make mistakes, and that even when people stop loving each other, it doesn't mean they stop loving their kids. They seemed to accept that. Over time, the nightmares they used to have stopped. They started laughing more. We developed little routines: Saturday pancakes, Friday movie nights, bedtime stories. I learned how to braid hair, how to pack school lunches, how to sew a loose button. Things I never thought I'd be doing, but now I wouldn't trade for anything. Meanwhile, my ex's life started unraveling. I didn't take pleasure in it, but it happened. She quit her job, moved in with her sister, and went through a few different relationships, all of them short-lived. I'd hear bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Apparently, she started drinking more and blaming everyone but herself for what happened. One time, she sent me a long message through email. She said she was sorry for everything and that she missed her family. I read it once and didn't reply. I knew that door had to stay closed. Forgiving her doesn't mean letting her back in. I had my peace, and I wasn't going to trade it for chaos. A few years later, I bought a small house just outside Boise. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. My daughters have their own rooms, a big yard, and a swing set. Every time I see them running around out there laughing, it reminds me that walking away was the best decision I ever made. People ask me sometimes if I've ever thought about remarrying. Honestly, I don't know. I've dated casually, but I haven't found anyone who truly makes me want to take that leap again. Maybe I will someday, maybe not. For now, my focus is on raising my girls to be strong, independent, and wise enough to see red flags before they get hurt. I tell them the truth, not about their mother's cheating, but about self-respect, boundaries, and honesty. I want them to know that love should never come at the cost of your peace or your self-worth. Looking back now, I can see all the small things I ignored. The defensiveness when I asked simple questions, the secretive phone habits, the sudden disinterest in family time, the way she started dressing up to run errands. That took longer and longer. Hindsight is a brutal teacher, but it's also a clear one. If I could give one piece of advice to men going through something similar, it would be this: document everything. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. Love blinds you, but evidence speaks when you can't. Record conversations if you need to. Save texts. Keep a journal. The system doesn't care about who's right. It cares about who can prove they're right. And secondly, don't let her gaslighting make you doubt what you saw or felt. When someone betrays you, they'll do everything they can to shift the blame. They'll tell you it's your fault, that you're crazy, controlling, or paranoid. That's how they protect their ego. The truth threatens them, so they rewrite reality to make themselves feel better. Don't buy into it. Stand firm in what you know to be true. I'm still standing. It took time, therapy, and a lot of patience, but I got there. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. The house, the job, the kids, the peace, all of it was worth the fight. When I watch your channel, True Story, I hear men who sound like I did once, broken, confused, trying to make sense of how someone they loved could betray them so deeply. If my story helps even one of them see that there's life after all this, then it's worth sharing. There's strength in walking away, there's power in rebuilding, and there's peace in knowing you stood your ground when everything tried to knock you down. Before I go, here's the thing. A lot of men don't talk about therapy. We bottle everything up, we push through, and we call it being strong. But what I've learned over these past few years is that real strength isn't about staying silent or pretending you're fine. Real strength is facing the pain head on, dealing with it, and coming out of it better than you were before. I want to talk about what therapy did for me, And more importantly, what it did for my daughters. It didn't just help us heal from the mess my ex-wife created. It changed how we communicate, how we handle stress, and how we see ourselves. After the divorce was finalized, I told myself I was fine. I told everyone else that too. On paper, I had won. I had full custody. The house was mine. My ex's alimony claims were denied. All the stuff people say should make you feel vindicated. But inside, I felt hollow. It's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't gone through it. You think catching your spouse cheating will make everything black and white. You think you'll just get angry, move on, and rebuild. But what actually happens is this weird, heavy fog that doesn't go away. You start second-guessing yourself, replaying moments, wondering if you missed signs, wondering if it was all your fault somehow. That's where I was. I'd put my girls to bed at night, sit in the dark living room, and just stare at nothing. The silence after they fell asleep was deafening. I'd scroll through my phone or stare at the TV, but nothing stuck. It felt like the world had lost its color. I didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't party. My outlet was work and the gym. I'd work long hours and lift until my arms shook, but even then, when I got home, the loneliness crept back in. I kept telling myself, just push through it. That's what men are taught to do. We don't talk about feelings, we just endure. But you can only push things down for so long before they come bursting out in other ways. For me, it showed up in frustration. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd snap over little things. The girls would spill juice on the floor, and I'd raise my voice, not because I was mad about the juice, but because I had all this bottled up emotion with nowhere to go. One day, my oldest daughter, she was about 7 at the time, looked up at me after I got frustrated over something small and said, "Daddy, are you mad at me or Mommy?" That hit me like a punch in the chest. It was the wake-up call I needed. I realized that no matter how much I loved them, my pain was spilling over into their lives. They didn't deserve that. The next day, I called a therapist. Her name was Karen. She was a middle-aged woman who had worked with divorced families for decades. I'll be honest, at first I hated the idea. I walked into that first appointment thinking, what's this lady going to tell me that I don't already know? I figured it would be some generic advice like focus on yourself or forgive and move on. But she didn't talk much in that first session. She just listened. I told her the whole story. How I met my ex, the affair, the gaslighting, the recordings, the court battles. Every word came out of me like water breaking through a dam. I think I talked for 40 straight minutes without stopping. When I finally ran out of breath, she just said, "Dan, that's a lot of trauma to carry by yourself." Something about that word, trauma, stuck with me. I never thought of it that way. I thought trauma was for soldiers or people who'd been through something catastrophic, but betrayal, manipulation, and emotional abuse are traumatic. You might not have scars you can see, but your mind and heart still bleed. She said I'd been in survival mode for years, from the cheating to the threats to the custody battle. When you're in that state, your brain doesn't rest. You're always bracing for the next hit. That's why I couldn't sleep, why I was so jumpy, why I felt emotionally numb. Over the next few months, therapy became my anchor. I went once a week. At first, it felt awkward. I didn't know how to talk about my feelings without sounding weak, but slowly it started making sense. I learned how to recognize triggers, the moments when anger or sadness wasn't about the present, but about something unresolved from before. Karen taught me something called reframing. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" she had me start asking, "What did this teach me?" It sounds simple, but it changes everything. When you shift from being the victim of your story to being the student of it, you start taking your power back. I started seeing the patterns, how I ignored red flags because I didn't want to believe the woman I loved was capable of betrayal, how I let guilt stop me from standing up for myself, How I had spent so much of my life trying to be the good guy that I forgot boundaries were a form of self-respect, not cruelty. It was uncomfortable at first, facing my own role and what I tolerated, but it was necessary. Therapy wasn't about blaming myself. It was about understanding why I allowed certain things and how to make sure I never would again. About 6 months into my own therapy, I started noticing changes in my daughters too. They were doing better overall, laughing more, adjusting to our new routine, but I could tell they were still holding things in. Kids are resilient, but they're also sensitive. They pick up on tension, even when you think you're hiding it. Sometimes they'd ask questions about their mom that I didn't know how to answer. My youngest once asked me, "Why doesn't mommy come see us more?" I froze. How do you explain to a child that their mother's absence isn't their fault? That she's battling her own demons? That's when I realized they needed therapy too, not because they were broken, but because they deserved a safe space to talk about what happened. I found a child therapist who specialized in family trauma. Her name was Lindsay, and she was incredible. The girls loved her right away. She used games, drawing, and play to help them express what they couldn't put into words. After a few months, I started seeing a difference. They were sleeping better, smiling more, and even their teachers noticed they seemed happier. Lindsay said they were processing the loss of their family unit and learning to trust that our home was stable and safe. She also suggested that we do some joint family therapy sessions, me and the girls together. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect, but those sessions ended up being some of the most healing experiences of my life. We'd sit in a circle and talk about our days. The girls would draw pictures of their feelings, and I'd share what I was learning in my own sessions. Sometimes we'd cry, sometimes we'd laugh, but every time we left the room feeling lighter. Those sessions taught me how to really listen, not to fix, not to lecture, just to listen. When my daughter said, "I miss mommy," I didn't rush to change the subject. I said, "It's okay to miss her." When she said, "I don't like when people yell," I promised her that our home would be different. That kind of honesty built a level of trust between us that I don't think we ever had before. There's this stigma around therapy, especially for men. Society tells us that if we go talk to someone, it means we're weak or can't handle life. That's nonsense. What therapy really does is help you understand life. Your reactions, your emotions, your triggers. It helps you make sense of the chaos so it doesn't consume you. I've had guys tell me, "I don't need therapy, I just hit the gym." And don't get me wrong, working out is great. I still go 4 or 5 days a week, but lifting weights doesn't untangle trauma. You can't bench press grief. You can't deadlift betrayal out of your system. What therapy did for me was give me emotional clarity. It helped me separate who I was from what happened to me. I'm not the guy whose wife cheated. I'm not the divorced dad. I'm just Dan, a man who went through hell, came out stronger, and learned how to be a better father and person because of it. It also helped me forgive, not her necessarily, but myself. I used to beat myself up for not seeing it sooner, for not being perfect, for not keeping the marriage together. Karen helped me see that self-blame is a form of control. We blame ourselves because it gives us the illusion that if we had done something differently, the outcome would have changed. But the truth is, you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. You can love them, support them, and forgive them, but you can't save them. Once I accepted that, the resentment started fading. I stopped caring about what she was doing, who she was with, or how she was living. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped replaying the moment I caught her cheating. It all started to lose power over me. Now, when I think about her, I don't feel hate. I feel distance, like looking at a photograph of someone you used to know. The image is there, but the emotion is gone. As for my girls, therapy gave them tools I wish I had at their age. They've learned how to express feelings instead of suppressing them. When they're sad, they say so. When they're frustrated, they talk it out. Sometimes we'll be at dinner and one of them will say, "Daddy, I'm having a hard day." And we'll talk about it. Those conversations are gold. They're the kind of emotional honesty that breaks generational cycles. I'll never forget one session where Lindsay asked my daughters to describe our home in one word. My youngest said, "Safe." My oldest said, "Peaceful." I could have cried right there after everything we'd been through, the chaos, the fighting, the fear. To hear them say that was the moment I knew we were okay. Therapy also helped me outside of family life. At work, I'm calmer and more focused. I don't take stress home with me anymore. I've learned boundaries, how to say no without guilt. I've even started mentoring a couple younger guys who went through divorces themselves. One of them told me, "Man, I can't believe you went to therapy. I thought that was just for people who can't handle it." I told him, "No, it's for people who are done pretending they can handle everything alone." Because that's the truth. No one heals in isolation. You can't outwork emotional pain. You have to face it, understand it, and grow through it. It's been about 3 years now since we started therapy, and I still go. Not every week, but regularly enough to keep my mind in check. The girls still go too, though less often. It's become part of our rhythm. Just another way we take care of ourselves, like going to the doctor or eating healthy. Sometimes I'll look at them playing in the yard, laughing without a care in the world, and I'll think about how close I came to losing my composure. How easily anger and bitterness could have turned me into someone I didn't want to be. Therapy stopped that from happening. It gave me my peace back. If any man out there is reading this or listening to this, if you share it, and he's sitting in that same fog I was in, thinking therapy isn't for him, I'm telling you, it works. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you self-aware. It makes you present. It makes you capable of being the man your kids need and the person you deserve to be. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. That's where I'm at now. I can talk about everything that happened, the betrayal, the lies, the court battles, without my chest tightening up. It's just part of my story now, not the whole story. These days, life is simple. I wake up early, make breakfast for my girls, drop them off at school, go to work, hit the gym, and spend the evenings cooking dinner or helping with homework. On weekends, we go hiking or drive to McCall just to get away for a bit. I found peace in routine, the kind of peace I never had when I was constantly trying to manage someone else's chaos. The girls are thriving. They're both straight A students, into sports, and talk about wanting to go to college someday. They still see their mom occasionally under supervision, but it's more of an obligation than a bond. I used to worry about how that would affect them, but therapy has given them perspective. They understand that love doesn't always come from where it's supposed to. Sometimes you have to build your own version of family. I've even started dating again, slowly, carefully. I'm not rushing into anything. I know what I want now, and more importantly, what I won't tolerate. Therapy gave me that clarity too. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Therapy isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about understanding what broke and making sure you never let it happen again. It's about giving yourself permission to heal, not for your ex, not for revenge, but for yourself and for the people who depend on you. My daughters and I are living proof that you can go through hell, come out scarred but stronger, and build something beautiful from the ashes. So yeah, I'm a believer now, not just in therapy, but in healing, real honest healing. Thanks again for letting me share this part of my journey, true story. Your channel gives men a voice when most of the world tells us to stay quiet. Keep doing what you're doing. It matters more than you know.